The West Tigers podcast is brought to you by the West Tigers Podcast Forum. Have your say on anything to do with the West Tigers, westtigers.com.au. It's the West Tigers podcast for episode number 359. And it comes in the wake of Spoon Bowl. The Tigers 26, that sounds all right, but the Eels 60. Let's have a look at some one-word submissions from the West Tigers podcast forum in regards to that game, and then we'll give everybody else that's here on the pod this time a chance to give us their one word. A new member, Anonymous79, the one word for the game against the Eels, Shamozzle. Mike's one word was disappointed but not upset. Canberra Tigers' word was drain the swamp. Natmac78 fans, every week we stand by the club and put up with these performances. Tiger 5150, Nadia, not Nadia. I knew I was going to have trouble. Nadia, that's the word. I knew I was going to have trouble pronouncing it. And what that means is the lowest or most unsuccessful point in a situation. So the bottom of the J curve, hopefully Tiger 5150. Peter Ray's word, unofficially, I took it out of one of Peter Ray's posts on the West Tigers podcast forum, blender, saying, can we change the shredder to a blender? So maybe the shredder's just not up to it. We need something with a little bit more power. We need the blender. Tigersman, ordinary. It was an ordinary Tigers performance. Avo's word was purgatory, year after year of torment and misery with no end in sight. Eastie Magpie's word was soulless. The players had already checked out. Russ Tuddy 63's word was okay. I'm okay with the result, as we failed to play our best football. Peter Ray came back with another one word, and that is despondency. Coaching has been our Achilles heel. Plunder Monkey, overwrought. They played like a bunch of 5-year-olds at their first birthday party, hyped up on lollies, soft drinks and chips. Snake's one word was NFL. I think Gary and Eddie will probably agree with that. And Dirty Red's one word was disgrace. The performance was a complete and utter disgrace. I've got a couple of one words. Nick's here, Gary's here, and Eddie's here. We'll kick off with Eddie with one word, please, to describe Spoon Bowl 2024, please.
Is this my one word for the season, Joel, or is that something separate?
Just for this game.
I'm just going to say it was lame. Just lame, Joel. It was a bit of a build-up for this game. It was our biggest game of the year, and I'm just going to go with lame. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, it's not bad. Hello, Gary. How you going?
Yeah, not too bad, Joel. Yourself?
Good. What do you got for us?
Yeah, I'm just going to go with line in the sand. For me, I'm going to, after that game, I'm putting down a line. I'm willing to kind of let go that anything that's happened in the past kind of 12 months, 5 years, however long you want to take that back, moving into next year. And I know it's not so much just talking about that game, but that's the last game I think we can make an excuse for. Next year we need to see a vast improvement.
Yeah, I was going to make that point a little bit later on in the pod, is that we've sort of entered a new era, which is that the, what are their names? Justin and the other guy, Lee. I couldn't remember his name for a second. Justin and Lee, their decisions, their era is now, you would say, come to an end, and it's on the people who've made the decisions in the last 12 months or 9 months, let's say. We'll start to fall onto them a little bit more. Hey, Nick, how you going? We've got lame, we've got line in the sand. What have you got?
Hey, Joel. I kind of agree with Gary. I think it has to be a line in the sand, and we have to look forward now, because we cannot have a repeat of this year, last year. Going forward, it has to turn next year. And I've said that before, that 2025 has to be the year that we move ahead. But my word, and it's probably more a term, undisputed three-peat champions. And I think we just showed on Friday evening that we deserved to come last again. Sadly, it was horrible. For the crowd that made the effort to turn up and sell out again and to come out and play in the way that we did, it was horrible from the get-go, and they carried it through the match. It was so hard to watch. But yeah, I think we deserve the spoon, sadly.
I do have to highlight one point Nick said there. That crowd out there, I was out there on Friday night. That crowd was amazing. Like, we've been capping these grounds at about 16, 15 to 16,000 for the past 18 months or so. There was over 17,000 people out there on Friday night, and it was jam-packed in there. So a really poor performance to reward the people that made the effort to be there. But that was a great sign for the Macarthur region just to have that many people out there.
Yeah, well done to them, and it was good to see. Not just that for that game, but for all the games out there this year, they've supported really well. I've got a couple of words. I've got avoided. We didn't avoid the spoon, but I avoided the game. So I was out. I was in a position where I couldn't watch the game. So I thought to myself, I'm not going to ruin my evening by looking at the score. I'm going to wait till 7:30. And then I will see what happened. And my phone was lighting up, and I'm thinking to myself, yeah, I don't think things are going too well out at Campbelltown.
So who was that, Joel, lighting up your phone?
It was the group
Same
chat.
person lighting up mine.
It was a few other people that send me messages when a game is on, and I thought, this is not good. And I looked at the score, and I think at that stage it was 56. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, I can't watch this game. I'm not going to go back. It's the last game of the year. I don't care. I'm not watching it. It never happened. So don't ask me for any expert opinion on what happened at Campbelltown on Friday night. I've got a pretty good idea. I've seen it before, but not specifically on that game, Gary.
Yeah, I thought I was really popular during the game because my phone just kept buzzing. And then when I eventually looked at it, it was just 426 messages from Eddie Otto.
Exactly. Nick?
I have to credit the, I don't know if it was the Tigers media team that did it or NRL, but if you go on the Tigers website and have a look at the match highlights, they managed to cram all those points into about 5 minutes. So it was very well done by the media team.
Yeah. My other word is first. And it's a little bit like yours, Gary. It's kind of like the reverse of yours. But my word first is this is the first pod, as far as I'm concerned, of the off-season. It's the first pod of 2025. So I've drawn the line in the sand as well.
Is it now season 8, Joel?
We'll call it season 8. Yeah, let's get rid of season 7. We certainly got rid of season 6 real quick last year. So, yeah, let's call it the start of season 8 and better things. I wanted to start with something that was a little bit left of centre, a little bit different. And that is, does it really matter that we got the spoon? Because the reason why I say that is it was something that Jack Bird actually said in that newspaper interview that he did, which was interesting that he's basically said, I've signed with the West Tigers before it was official. But he said that, and I'll throw it to you, Eddie, and I'll see what this opens up for you and in your mind. But he said, basically, if you miss the finals, it's all failure. It doesn't really matter if you win the spoon. Are we making too much of a big deal about it? And every team that's missed the finals, really, we've all ended up with the same thing.
Well, he's right. There's no consequences for getting 3 wooden spoons in a row. We still turn up and we're still in the competition, as far as I'm aware, next season. That we don't get relegated, which we probably deserve to be. You probably deserve to. I mean, lots of sports have relegation overseas if you finished in the bottom 3. I mean, we've been last 3 in a row, but I do think it matters because, like, it might not be players. Jack Bird's right that if you come 9th, you're not in the finals, and if you come 17th, you're not in the finals. But everyone remembers, my mates certainly remember, who support other clubs who finishes last, and I'm sure the players get reminded on social media and by their mates. And just for momentum, Joel, I got a couple of texts from mates before the game saying this is actually important for next season, just to get a positive vibe around the club. And imagine finishing with 3 straight wins. And he sort of compared it a bit to 09. Remember 09? I think we come home and maybe won 6 of our last 8. I know we finished 9th. But we carried that momentum into 2010, and we went on to make the top 4 the next 2 years. Not saying that's going to happen, but just to finish on that low point, it sort of, just rejects a couple of things that we've done in the weeks previous. So I think it does matter, even though there's no consequence for it.
For me, I don't think there's a huge difference between finishing 17th or 16th. I don't think that's the issue there. But I think there is a big difference between 2 wooden spoons in a row and 3 wooden spoons in a row. And that, for me, is why I would have liked to have seen a win on Friday night, is it changes the narrative a fair bit. Wouldn't have been hearing about us being 3 times wooden spooners all off-season, which we're going to bombarded with. It would have consolidated that improvement that we have seen this year. Like, we've won more games this year, but we're still finished last. If that have also got off the bottom, it would have consolidated that improvement. Now, in saying all that, there's going to be negativity around it, but there's some positives to come as well, some more signings to come, and things like Jerome Luai's first day at the club. Those sort of things are going to be positive stories that are going to come over this off-season and start to build this fan base and kind of the feeling around the club up a little bit. And, boy, the club does need that.
If I can throw something in there, I'd said a few weeks ago, I was banging on here about, I don't care if we come last, I don't care if we get the spoon. And I did change my mind leading into Spoon Bowl because I did think how psychologically beneficial it could be if we could beat Para in that last round to finish one place better. And yeah, you're right, 16th, 17th, it's the same thing. But I think just the way we rolled over and the way we came out and we were never in that match. I know we led early after 15 or so minutes. I think we were up by a try. But that was lucky. I mean, Parramatta had some chances early and they blew it. We only scored a couple early tries off the back of some Lachlan Galvin brilliance. One was that flat bullet pass he threw out to the wing, and then he put that little deft kick in for Felity early as well. But apart from that, we made so many mistakes. The defence was never up for it, and I'm sure we'll go into that a little bit. I know you don't want to talk too much about the game, Joel, and I know some of these players are leaving, like Stefano, but I've been trying to support Stefano, especially through the back half of this year after he made his decision to leave, thinking, he's got every right now to go out there and just leave everything on the table, sort of like what Papali'i did the last half a dozen games. He had a real go. But Stefano, I watched a couple of moments during the game on Friday where he was at marker defending on our line. He didn't even move up out of marker and occasionally left huge holes in the middle. I remember Gutherson ran right past him. He made no effort to get across and close that gap. Like Gutherson, I don't even think was touched. It was just disgusting. And that whole performance for me was just a disgusting way to end the year. Just so deflating.
15 or 20 years ago, Joel, I think Newcastle got 3 spoons in a row back in the 2014, around then. But, 20 years ago, there wasn't much media narrative around the bottom teams. So there's less pressure probably around bottom teams. Like, I don't remember West Tigers being talked about much in 01 and 02 and 03 when we were struggling. But the problem is now it's such a negative media cycle. So I think it adds pressure to everyone in that building, when they're leading with those articles into the season. They're the 3-time wooden spooners. So it was a chance to get rid of that. And, I just think it heaps a little bit of pressure on the club, just having that tag for another 12 months until we can, if we do, get rid of it next year.
There's a few points there to make. I'm just going to quickly ask you guys, do you think in terms of the NRL era and knowing the teams that have run last, do you think that this team and the performance that they've put in over the course of this season, it's deserved, that the wooden spoon was deserved? Like, I think you could probably say last year and the year before deserved. This year, maybe not quite so much. What do you guys think about that?
If we had have put on a better performance on Friday night, then I could probably go along with that thinking. I think Nick summed it up pretty well when he said that game probably showed we deserved the wooden spoon this year. The fact that we're playing the side that was running second last and they put 60 through us, I think that really consolidates where we are. If we were playing one of the top 4 teams and they put 60 through us on Friday night, I don't think it changes stuff very much. But the fact we're playing Parramatta, who are running second last, and we were playing for the wooden spoon, and we had a side put 60 through us, then I think that shows we deserve to finish where we did. But I'm hopeful there's been enough changes throughout our club that we're going to start heading in the right direction soon.
I'm definitely feeling more positive for next year based on who we have coming in. I think a lot of what we've seen with some of our losses, especially that one on Friday, just really highlights the inexperience in the squad that was on the field. So, so many 19-year-olds, still even 20-year-olds, like these kids are young. They've looked great at times, but sometimes they've just. I know we've all been frustrated, but at times they have looked like still reserve graders. And as you've said, Gary, many times, some of these kids are still eligible to play SG ball, right? So,
correct. But 4 of them on Friday night could have played SG ball.
Exactly. So, yeah, I think Benji made a comment. I can't remember if it was in the post-match press conference, but he did say he highlighted the fact that we, had so many of these young kids come through this year, and while it's been hard for results, it's been absolutely invaluable for their NRL experience, and they have got a huge taste of it this season where they would not have at any other club. So that probably will be beneficial for them experience-wise. They know what to expect when they play NRL now, and they've been at the bottom, so they've just been pummeled, right? And they've had some small tastes of success. That will benefit us, and I think with those inclusions that we've got coming next season, I've got everything crossed for a turnaround in fortune.
I agree with the boys, Joel. Like, we were the worst side in the competition. And if you look at the for and against, it's pretty clear. We were the worst side. Like, I think it was minus 290. And the second worst was actually Souths, around minus 190. So that's 100 points, which is about 2 or 3 games. But it doesn't mean there hasn't been improvement. So this year, for instance, if we had 6 wins last year, we would have avoided the spoon. St George won 5 games. And our last 2 wooden spoons were 4-win efforts. So we've gone from 4 wins to 6 wins, which is a 50% increase. So they're the small wins, and you wouldn't be talking like this as a coach to your club or Shane Richardson saying these are small wins, but just analysing it, there are vagaries around things. But the issue is, Joel, even with all these signings next year, you look at that bottom 4 or 5 teams in the competition. If Parramatta are a bottom 4 team next year, well, they've got Mitchell Moses coming back to that side that pumped us by 60. You look at South Sydney, they've got Wayne Bennett coming in. They've got Campbell Graham coming back. So who are the teams? There's no other teams that are 4 or 5 win teams. So even though we have improved this year, we are still the worst team, because the last 2 wooden spoons in 22 and 23, we were a pretty long last with 4 wins. This year we're last, not as long a last, but in terms of for and against, it's a similar sort of scenario when I look at the differentials for us. Like 2022, we were minus 327. 2023, we were minus 290. 2024, minus 287. So it's very slightly better, but points conceded, 677, 22, 675, 23, 750 this year, which is over 31 points a game. I know the last 8 weeks that blew out massively, and that was probably on track to be better. I know that's a very long answer to your question, but there are small improvements, but it still resulted in that another wooden spoon.
Yeah, I've got those stats there with the defence. I want to talk about the defence, the 750 for the season. That's scary. But Gary, just an observation. I know you got a point to make, but an observation that I'd like to make is that, as compared as a fan between this year and the last couple of years, in 22 and 23, there was a lot of games I went into thinking or knowing that we were really no chance. But this year there weren't that many games where I thought, and obviously, the West Tigers glasses are on a little bit, but there was a lot of games this year where I thought we probably were more, at least a chance of winning, I suppose. So I felt a little bit more confident in this team than in the 22 and 23 teams. I think when we look back at these 3 years after a few years have gone, we'll look at it like they were really, really bad years, and 24 was, although the results weren't a lot better, we were starting to head in the right direction. There was some movement, or that trajectory was starting. And it's right what you say. It's a shame we conceded 60 points, because that does take a bit of the edges off that a little bit. But if you know what I mean. So the stats say it was terrible, but my gut feeling about the year was that it wasn't as bad as it sort of ended up.
Yeah, the only game I remember really feeling that we didn't stand a chance going into beforehand was that Roosters game. Leading into the game against the Roosters at the Sydney Football Stadium, I went to that game and I went there really feeling no chance. I also had that feeling going into the game against Manly 2 weeks ago as well. I thought they were primed to really put a show on us, and it didn't happen on that occasion. So I do agree with you. The season felt a lot better than what last season felt.
Yeah, It was
a
nowhere
couple
near
of-
as energy zapping. Like by the end of both halfway through last year, I was exhausted. This year, there was enough stuff to keep me interested and entertained.
Well, and I think a couple of wins towards the end of the season helps with that a little bit. The fact that we got 2 wins in a row towards the end, and we're at least in a position leading into the last round where we mightn't get the wooden spoon. The other thing I do want to raise, Eddie mentioned a moment ago how if you look at the sides who are down the bottom around us in Souths and Parramatta, they'll have certain players coming back and they will be better as well next year. But at the start of the season, no one would have picked it to be Parramatta and South Sydney down with us at the bottom of the table. Most people had them in the top 8 or very close to the top 8 this season. So having a look at the teams that necessarily finished near us this year and them improving for next year doesn't mean there's not an opportunity for us to move up the table. It may be some sides that you don't expect it to be like it was this year that we have a chance of leapfrogging. So, yes, those teams have some players. But I will say, I think I've got feelings that Parramatta might be in for a little bit of a rough off-season and a rough 2025 as well. So I think there are opportunities for us to improve next year. If I look at things now, I'm not looking at it thinking we're going to be a top 8 side next year. But I do agree with you, Joel. I think this season is the first step to building us into being a more competitive club.
To Gary's point there, I think that's fair. What I would say is I don't think the middle of the competition is as far away as we used to be to teams like Newcastle, Canberra, who have made the 8. You don't look at their rosters next year and go, well, they are 6 to 8 games better than us. Teams like Dolphins, Dragons. And you don't go into games against those teams this year thinking you can't win. So even though I still think, if I went through the rosters, certainly this year I think we had the weakest. But I don't believe in this argument, Joel, but you could make an argument, like just this is a very on analytics thing and betting thing. We didn't start one game as favourites this year. We started one game equal favourites, which was against St George Illawarra at Campbelltown. So let's just say we were 5-cent underdog. So we've actually won 6 games as underdogs. So I wonder how many other teams in the NRL this year won 6 games as a betting underdog. Now that's not a wrap for the squad because that also says you have a terrible squad. And betting odds are ingrained in your, they're taken on board as your performances mount. So as you start playing badly, your odds go out further. So I'm not saying that's a wrap, but which clubs increase their winning percentage by 50%? Obviously, it's so much easier to do when you got 4 wins. It's pathetic. 4 wins to 6. But to not start a season once as favourites, like that's hard work. Like to me, that says this squad's done okay to get 6 wins because that's unbelievable. I don't know if that would have happened in the NRL era. Maybe back when the Magpies were on their last legs in 99 or something. But to not have one betting favourite the whole year. That's tough, and to win 6 games is probably not a bad result, considering what the odds makers thought they would do all year.
But we also had the worst draw in the comp because we're the only team in the comp to not play one side that finished below us last year. Every side we played finished above us. No other team had that.
And to be fair, Nick, and I know that typically over the off-season, optimism does build, and we're all looking for things to be optimistic about. But it's going to be a very, very vastly different-looking team in round 1 of 2025 as compared to that team that ran out at Campbelltown on Friday night.
Yeah, correct. And when I was sitting there listening to Eddie talk a few moments ago, when you think it's all about the squad, isn't it? Like this year was all about the squad. When I think back to round 1, I think we're all looking forward to seeing what Aiden Caesar would do in the 7 jersey this year because we'd had Brooks for so long, steering the ship. So we thought, okay, Caesar, not as quick, but experienced, probably a bit more stable kicking game, might bring some direction. But we also had Bud Sullivan start at 6, who didn't last very long, right? So we invested a fair bit of money and longevity into his contract because we thought Bud would be the answer, and he wasn't. So in comes Lachlan Galvin. A fresh-faced, was he 18 at the start of the year? Year old who all of a sudden, didn't take long to announce himself to the NRL. So look at me, I'm a
10 minutes, according to Eddie.
10 minutes, yeah, there you go. He put his hand up and said, look what I can do. And And unfortunately, and if it wasn't for that hip drop, he probably would be accepting that Rookie of the Year this year. It really comes down to squad. It comes down to spine. So looking to next year, Caesar's going to be gone. Sullivan's nowhere near it. Galvin's got a good year of NRL under his belt now, and in comes Jerome Luai. And what he has shown this year with a lot of the season where Nathan Cleary hasn't been around, that just gets me excited. Buller, I know he's got an injury which we spoke about a couple of weeks ago. I remember having that chat to him at Leichhardt where he said he's not looking at doing any contact, or won't be able to do contact until very close to round one, which worries me. But I would prefer him at number one to Mason. I do like what I've seen from Mason at fullback the last handful of rounds, but I think Buller probably adds a little bit more. I think he's a bit safer in defence, probably adds a little bit more in attack overall. But I think the team is starting to come together. I do like what we're adding, and I'm sure we'll get into those positional additions shortly.
Well, I mean, it's a good moment to mention Steve, to say that that's one of Steve's key points, is that in the last 5 years or so, we've not improved the positions when we've replaced players. But this time, if you look at, especially maybe not so much 24 to 25, but if you look at the difference between 23 to 25. So I know this is a drastic one, but you're going from Brandon Wakeham to Jerome Luai. I mean, that's right at the top end of the scale, if you know what I mean. But I think we are starting to improve the roster bit by bit. And I don't think that was necessarily a true representation of where the West Tigers are on Friday night, given the team that was named. Sorry, Nick, you...
No, I was going to say, I think we've also probably got to give quite a bit of credit to Shane Richardson as well, because he has been at the bottom with the Rabbitohs in Penrith, and he knows what it takes and which players are required in which positions to get the team moving the other direction on the ladder. So I know I think Benji's smarter than what we all give him credit for. I do wish he'd stop, getting in the dummy half in the warm-ups at Campbelltown, and I heard he was trying to, he was kicking field goals in the pre-game as well. Maybe he was a bit excited with the sellout crowd in front of him, and he did look sharp in his suit. But I think Benji has potential. I just think he needs to probably sit back after this season, which I'm sure they all will do, and do their review and work out what they need to do better. But I think Richo is 100% the right person to help get us recruiting those players in the right positions to get us moving in the correct way.
Well, he's got football knowledge, doesn't he? I mean, there's a big difference between this CEO and the previous CEO. The previous CEO didn't come from a rugby league background, didn't have 30 years or more experience building teams, so you can see it, but it takes a little bit of time. It does. One thing that's got to be obviously looked at is our defence. As Eddie pointed out, we've conceded 750 points for the season. John Morris in charge of defence. Would that be a position, Eddie, that you'd be looking at changing up? I mean, it's hard for someone to fail like that in their position and keep their job. It's not that I've got an axe to grind about John Morris. I think he's probably got a future as a coach. But I think it leads more into our fitness and that thing that I've been harping on all year, physicality. Like, I just don't think we were physically prepared properly for this season. And I think that it's your defence that ends up suffering in that regard.
Yeah, can I use my word for the season, Joel, in this? Because that's going to...
Sure.
So my word to sum up the season is defensive mentality. And until we, throw away this 05 mentality, which worked and it was wonderful, but until we ingrain a defensive mentality into this club, I always think we're going to be bottom feeders. And I look at the biggest improvers this year, which was Canterbury, and it was all built around, Serraldo's defensive system and believing in that and getting the players that could actually adopt that in a game. And even when I listen to guys like Craig Fitzgibbon every week, he won their game today. They went to Manly and pumped Manly, I think 42-20. All he was talking about was the defence. There were some good defensive periods, but really disappointed in 10 or 15 minutes. Now, Benji does talk these things, but I don't see the actions. I don't see the actions on the field that represent a defensive mentality. So I think this is bigger than John Morris, Joel. I think it's unfair. I know he's defensive coach and, it's his title, but I think it's a club-wide thing that we've got to go all in on. And I don't think he deserves to lose his job because I think it's much more than one person, because this mentality of, late in the year we were getting some wins, but it was because Manly switched off that game and we beat them 36-28, and I think we beat Canberra 46-26 and things like that. So I would keep John Morris. I think, given we're going to be turning over, definitely Robbie Farah's gone. I don't know what's happened with Chris Hyington. But we definitely need one or two more experienced guys on the staff, assuming Benji's going to be here. And then from there, you work out who's going to run the defence, whether it's John Morris or one of the other Kate.
One thing I'll say, just in regards to that 05 comparison, I don't think that was necessarily right, because I remember going to a trial game early in 05, which I think was up in Nelson Bay, and I remember the way that the team defended. I know we weren't playing top grade, but the whole way that the West Tigers defended was rejigged in that period by Tim Sheens and Royce Simmons. And I think that as much as, yes, we were an attacking team, we probably only averaged 20 points, which is probably a little bit more than what you'd like. So there's some truth in what you're saying, Eddie, for sure. You score 36, it doesn't matter if they score 22. We don't need to become the world's greatest defensive team. We've just got to find a way to get them. If you look at the last two games that we won, we've got to get them to 20 points instead of 34 points or more a game. So I don't think it has to be a revolution, but certainly we need to get a lot better in that regard, Gary. Because if you think about it, if we'd conceded an average of 20, then over 27 games, we're at a lot less than 750 points.
For me, this season was a little bit of a strange one. I thought early in the season our defence was quite good. I thought we were defending really well for probably the first 2 to 3 months of the season. But our attack was really poor.
Yeah, and then it switched.
And as our attack improved throughout the season, the defence really went downhill. So I don't know whether there was an intentional shift in focus and that kind of led to them swapping over. But the big thing for me is defence, a lot of it is about effort. And if there was a drop-off in effort once we were out of the running for making the finals, which again was about May this year, so it was a long time ago, if that drop-off in effort can have a massive effect on defence, because all those little extra things you got to do to get yourself in the right position in defence, they get exposed really easy once you start to ease up on that a little bit. And I'm willing, because I remember sitting here early in the season raving about what a great job John Morris had done, because last year we were averaging 28 to 30 points a game, and that had dropped right off at the start of the season. So I'm hoping it was more of the season was coming to an end, the effort dropped, and then we started to get some of those big points put on us towards the end of the season. Mm-hmm. So fingers crossed for me, that's what it was, and we can see some good structures put in place next year and an improvement in defence. But also, hopefully, some players coming in who are a lot more committed. Mm-hmm. I've said a number of times I wasn't that interested in Jack Bird, but everything I've heard about him since he self-announced his signing is what a committed and wholehearted player he is. And we need to get more of those sort of people into the club, and I think that will help defensively a lot as well.
All right, Gary's jumping the gun. We'll talk about Jack Bird in a few moments' time. I wanted to dial back to you, Nick. You had a bit of a shot at Stefano and some of his efforts. He, after the game, has apparently said a few very interesting things in regards to going to Melbourne and becoming fitter, which I thought was, well, it might tell us a little bit more about the point about how fit we've been and how well prepared we've been. But I think it also tells you what a flog he is, that, you can get fit yourself, you can drive those standards yourself, and to just say, oh, well, I'm not that fit here, but I'm going to go down to Melbourne and I'll be better because they're going to make me fitter. I was really quite upset with those comments.
100%. In the end, performance comes down to yourself. Whether you're an NRL footballer or you're working a job in an office somewhere, if you're not putting in the effort, you're not going to get results. If he's saying he's not fit enough, then go and do extras. If you know you're not fit enough, push harder at training. You have to take accountability. And I don't want to jump the gun, like you just said. Gary was talking about Jack Bird, but I've got an article highlighted with some comments that Bird made. about looking towards next year. And he says, I want to challenge myself. I'm probably going to have a bigger role than any previous role I've had at a club. And he goes on to say he wants to go there to Concord and help change the culture a bit and get them back into finals. And that's exactly the type of person you need at training. And I know Jerome's going to bring that when he comes from the Panthers. Taruva's going to bring that when he comes from the Panthers. I just hope that there's enough of them in that squad come, whether it's, or that those boys aren't going to be there from the beginning of November, but when they arrive after Christmas for pre-season, I hope there's enough of them that just, as a group, they have to change that mentality from day one at training, that these are the standards that we are pushing, and this is how you have to train, this is how you have to perform before you run onto the field for round one if you want to compete at the highest level, because we haven't competed at the highest level for a bloody long time. It's just so frustrating.
But they could ask Adam Dewey some advice on setting those standards.
Yeah, he knows exactly what the standards are about. So, I hope Adam's there pre-season driving those standards too.
Jackson Hastings is unwanted at Newcastle. I'm sure he's driving those standards up there as well. I wonder if, just sort of putting two and two together, when the whole Stefano thing came up and Shane Richardson sort of said, look, if he stays, he stays. If he doesn't, he doesn't. I wonder if maybe the attitude there hasn't been as good as it maybe could be. He's been checked out maybe for a little bit and they weren't overly fussed about keeping him around. So I think what we should do, if we've got nothing else really to add, is to put a full stop on season 2024 at this point, pretty much. I mean, we've got to come back next pod and talk about awards. But let's go through these one-word submissions to describe the season, then I'll get yours. Eddie, we've already got yours, defensive mentality. Tigersman on the West Tigers podcast forum, his word was green. The players and the coaching staff, but there were green shoots, and the fans green with envy when looking at how other teams perform. That's true, and that's a good one. Mike's one word to sum up season 24 for the Tigers: youngsters, with 12 newbies blooded. Anonymous 79, dregs, once again, we're on the bottom. Robbie, could be Robbie Farah. I don't know, because if you look at the response, if you look at this submission, true reflection on how well coached and prepped as a squad we were from the off-season. So it could be Robbie Farah maybe. But thank you, Robbie. Tiger Tragic 56's word was immature. Immature players and coach. Probably pretty right. My one word is youth. I don't think you can go past youth. It was a year of the youth. When you have that many young players come in, that's got to be the word I think that you've got to use. What have you got for us, Gary?
Well, I was going to go youth as well. Because, when you have this many young kids to boo, I don't think there's any other way to look at the season, especially the big part for me with the young guys this season, they were our best players. I think they were extremely let down by the experienced players in our club. Pretty much all the experienced players in our club, and some players who set really poor examples. John Bateman's performance this year, when you've got a bunch of 19-year-olds coming through, I think left a lot to be desired. And I thought Appy had a very committed sort of season. I thought he worked really hard and probably worked a little bit too hard, because I think it wasn't one of his better seasons this year. So I think the young guys were really let down by the more experienced players in our side.
All righty, what about for you, Nick?
I do agree with the youth and the green shoots and the kids. They actually kept me interested during the season. They were the ones that that I wanted to watch during games. When I didn't expect us to win a game against whoever the opponent was, I wanted to see how Buller played. I wanted to see how Mason played later in the year. I wanted to watch Sam Fainu, what a player he is. Lockie Galvin. These kids kept me excited throughout the year. As a whole, at the start of the year, if you had have asked me where I thought we were going to finish, I would have said last again. So expected is probably my word. Substandard as a whole. Unfortunately, it's a pretty negative word, but we just weren't competitive apart from a handful of games throughout that year. But there's enough there, like I say, with the additions coming in to really. I have more hopes, and I had more hopes for 2025 at the start of this year than I had hopes for this year, for 2024 season. So I'm looking forward. I do want to draw that line in the sand and just look ahead. I've had enough of 2024. A bit like you, Eddie. I'm done, mate. I'm mentally checked out. Need to chill out for 6 months.
So we'll see you in March as well, Nick.
Yeah. I'll call in from from the Bahamas or wherever I go. Do a pod here and there.
I'll ask you, Joel. Did you? Because one of my little rants was going to be about just Benji, and he was doing the press conference, and I try not to listen to him after getting thumped, but I invariably go and listen to him, and he was saying how proud he was of the team and blah 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 blah. And overall, I think he did an okay job to get 6 wins, and blooding 12 youngsters, a lot of teenagers. That's very difficult in the NRL, but I just don't know if he gets it. He was doing self-reflection in that press conference, which is good to see, but he's done that a couple of times this year, self-reflecting on his own coaching and stuff. But then the stuff I see, that just bugs me. I know it's a little thing, and you can't be someone that you're not. You can't turn into someone like Craig Bellamy and start ranting and raving if you're not Craig Bellamy, but out there kicking field goals. But more the problem was, apparently he told him during the week, just go out, throw the ball around, let's have some fun. It's the last game. I just think he got that completely wrong. And joining in at training, and there was some comments by a couple of players, he still carves us up at training. What is the point of joining in at training? What are you showing them? How you used to play? I don't get it. He's got to grow out of it a bit, and it's been a tough baptism of fire. And I think for the large part, he's held himself really well. He's been measured after wins. He's been measured after getting flogged. He hasn't thrown the baby out with the bathwater. But I still have grave doubts whether, a guy with his background as a footballer and his lack of coaching experience, whether this monumental task of turning us around, it has to be quick for him. It has to be next year. Doesn't necessarily have to be 8, but it can't be last. And yeah, there's just red flags there of some of the things that he does that other coaches wouldn't do.
The only thing I can say about that comment about telling the young guys to throw the ball around and go out and have fun is if they were starting to feel a little bit of pressure with the game. If there was a little bit of, because there was a little bit of a build up to the game, and there was a little bit of talk around and the calling of the Spoon Bowl. And I know it's not a lot of pressure. It's not a semi-final game, but maybe he was just trying to calm some nerves going into the game a little bit. But if you watch the game on Friday night, it definitely backfired because some of the passes we pushed, I think we were right in that game in the first 20 minutes or so. But there were some passes we pushed. There was some errors coming out of our own end that we shouldn't have made, and they really cost us. They really cost us to the point that, and the intercept just after half time, those sort of push passes really hurt the side on Friday night. And some of it, like Lockie Galvin pushed a pass that he shouldn't have thrown. He should have taken the tackle, but he threw the ball when he shouldn't have. I think those comments, though they may have been well intentioned, they definitely did backfire on Friday night.
I just think, Joel, in general, the longer you give a coach to prepare, the better a team should look. Craig Bellamy's never lost in round 1. So those times he's had 5 months to prepare for a game, that shows every single time. And the times we have buys in the middle of the season and we come back and we're completely unprepared, for me that shows something. I don't know what it is, but it's a lack of focus somewhere. And that's something Benji's got to look at, because last year, we had a bye in the middle of the year. We came back 74 against North Queensland. This game, we had 14 days to prepare. They had 6. They had 6 days off a hot day at Parramatta Stadium when they played the Dragons. We had 14 days, and we came out and we were just throwing the ball around, completing at 50%, pathetic tackling. And I just think that shows a lack of detail in the preparation, a lack of intensity in getting your mindset right. And it's only a year of evidence for Benji, but he was pretty much the head coach at times last year, and it's a pattern that I've seen repeated a few times, and a concern for me.
Can I just ask, Gary? Sorry, Gary. I know you're at the grounds on Friday night. When Benji was taking those shots for field goal before the game, did he land them?
To be honest, I wasn't watching. I may have been in a corporate box on Friday night.
Here we go.
My attention may have been elsewhere other than the warm-up, so I wasn't too focused either. But in regards to preparations around buys, the reason why I think coming off a buy is such a dangerous sort of time for any club is players get a break. Every time a team has a buy, players get half a week to a week off. And I think it was especially relevant on Friday night when we had a buy and then it was the end of the season. I think I said a number of times I was worried that the club would have started, some of the players would have been very hard to resist, starting to treat their season as being over. But I think that's a habit that our club definitely has, and all clubs take a break during the bye. But I think it's taken us longer to get our attention back to football after those buys. So I think it's definitely something to look at. But the fact, I don't really buy the argument that we had 2 weeks to prepare for that game, because that's just not how buys are treated. It's not like you play a game and you have the bye the following week and you're showing up on Monday to start training for that next game. Clubs don't treat it that way. Though if you're heading towards your third wooden spoon, maybe you should.
We had a couple of really awkward buys, didn't we? Round 1 and round 26.
And he loved the round 1 bye, mate. Loved it.
Round 1, 2, and 3 would be even better, Gary. Give us our 3 at the start. Get us 6 points head start, and wow.
Hey, I'm ready for the season to start next week, mate.
Come on, Gary.
There's a couple of things. There's a couple of things about all of that. So, firstly, in a normal world, 16th versus 17th at Campbelltown at 6 o'clock on a Friday night should have been a crowd of about 4,500 people. It was hyped up and made into something that it really wasn't. And that's not to say that our performance was in any way acceptable, our preparation was acceptable, but let's be realistic. There was nothing really to play for. And I'm not using that as an excuse, but yeah, it was hyped up into sort of a semi-final type thing. And to be honest, I just don't think that we had the cattle to be able to match Parramatta, who have been underperformers, and they've been able to score some points. We've seen that in recent times. I do have concerns about how Benji does some things. I don't mind a coach doing things differently. I don't necessarily think that's bad all of the time. The only thing I'll say is that probably Benji is trying to emulate Wayne Bennett, who coached Brisbane when he had 2 Walters, Langer, Renouf, Saylor, Lazarus, you name it. And basically it was a set and forget. You give them some instructions, you tell them go out, do your best, and they pretty much know what they're doing. But when you're coaching a team that's really struggling for talent and it's filled with reserve graders, it's I think a bit of a reaction to what happened with Madge, where Madge was flogging reserve graders and using a lot of negative reinforcement trying to get a performance out of them. And I think that Benji's coaching or style is sort of the polar opposite to that, where he's sort of using the positive reinforcement and trying to highlight the positives and get the growth there. I don't think either is exactly the right way of doing it. It's the same with Bellamy. I know that everybody raves about Bellamy, but has Bellamy ever had an ordinary squad? He hasn't. It's the same with Trent Robinson. The way that you coach a team that's really struggling is different to a team that's filled full of state of origin players, Gary.
Yeah, Brisbane had 2 Walters, we had 2 Alexes, so I think that shows the difference. But in regards to Bellamy, I give Bellamy a little bit more credit because he built that squad. So
yeah, of course. And it's not to take anything away from him, but he's never come into a team that's won a couple of wooden spoons,
No, but 2002, 2003, when he first started, I think it was 2003, he started down at Melbourne. There was a squad there to build. He didn't have all those players at that point. So I'll give him some credit there.
Those speedboats helped.
Pardon?
The speedboats in the garages helped.
The 2 sets of books also helped. But Trent Robinson, I agree 100%. He's just walked into a squad that's continually turning over with quality players. So I think that makes a massive difference. And I agree with you, Joel. Madge was a lot too hard, and Benji probably is going down that line of being a little bit too easy. He's got to find that middle ground.
Definitely.
And I think that's what's really crucial right now. And he's still got that time to develop that. I'd be interested to sit in on the kind of reflection they do on the season, the review they do of the season, and how that changes how he plans the off season. I think that would be really interesting to see. But I guess he gets some help next year because you got a guy like Jerome Luai who's coming into the squad who I don't think is going to put up with rubbish from players. If there's a guy not putting it in at training, they're going to be told what the standards are fairly quickly with a guy like Jerome Luai. So I think he gets a little bit of help in that regard, but it's really important that he gets that balance right.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to still be the leader no matter what. And Jerome Luai is certainly not afraid to give someone a spray. We've seen it numerous times. It's going to be another interesting year to see how all of that unfolds. Jack Bird, let's finally have a talk about Jack Bird. Not officially signed, but he's, as I think Nick said earlier, officially confirmed it himself, or unofficially confirmed it himself. 29, he signed apparently a 2-year deal, which is, I think it's a really good Shane Richardson move, because it seems like we're signing guys for 2 years rather than 3 or 4 years. At least the guys that have somewhat of a question mark over them. But Jack Bird said in that article he could probably play for another 4 years, which gives you hope, makes you believe that he's got hope still in his body. He's had those arthritis issues well covered. Won the premiership with Cronulla, went up to Brisbane, of course, and has been a good performer at St George, but coming with more responsibility here at the West Tigers, I think it tells us two things. I think it tells us that John Bateman is done with the club. I think John Bateman is not coming back. I think that's pretty much confirms it as far as I'm concerned. But the other thing is that the recruitment and the Shane Richardson recruitment drive has been about character as much as it's been about talent on the football field, because, as Jack Bird said, I'm going to have more responsibility there than I've had before. And by the sound of it, he sounded pretty optimistic about that. Eddie, the youth, green shoots, all of these things, the important thing in this next little bit for the club is to have some guys around that have been there and done it, but not necessarily long-term propositions, if that makes sense. That's what I like the signing of Jack Bird for 2 years. I think it's a good move.
Yeah, you've got to find some soldiers, Joel. That's what Canterbury found. You know, they found their Kurt Manns and those utility guys they went out signed. Obviously, they got their big fish in Crichton. We're hoping we've got that in Luai. I don't want to get sucked in by the comments, even though they're cool comments. I did like that one that Nick mentioned where he said, I'm probably going to have more responsibility here than I've had at other clubs, and he's looking forward to that. But I just get, like, you know, if you went back to the first article of when we signed Clemmer and Papali'i and Bateman, I'm sure they would have been positive, and, you know, I'm looking forward to coming to the Tigers, and how good's this? It's beautiful. And then they get in the doors and they lost 4 games, and they go, oh, hell, holy hell, what's happened here? So, yeah, 2 years is definitely enough. I think he's 28, 29, verging on 32, because he started real young, Jack Berg. I think he might have won a comp at Cronulla when he was 18 or 19 or something. And I like him as a footballer because he's fearless. But he's had 3 knee recos and some bad arthritis. Not sure if that's across his whole body or knee or something, but he's had a stack of injuries. So for me, like, his role, and this is what we don't see, what I'd be interested to see West Tigers compared to other clubs, is Monday to Friday. What really happens? Like, how hard do we really train compared to other clubs? And guys like Robbie and Benji, to be fair, they probably don't quite know, because you know, they spent 90% of their career here. So I think Jack Bird's job is like, who was the dude that retired from Cronulla earlier in the year due to injury? Finucane. For me, his job is like a Finucane. Monday to Friday, I don't care how banged up you are or how you feel or what's going on at home, you set the standards in this club, because I don't think he's going to be a revelation on the field. I think he's not going to play 24 games. He might play 18. But set some standards off the field to be someone the young guys look up to.
This was a signing, as I've said quite a few times on the pod, that I wasn't very interested in. I could see hallmarks of the Olam signing. And the thing that makes me feel a lot better about it is not only the 2 years. I think the length's spot on. You don't want him here any longer than that. But the $400,000 a year, I think, is pretty good. Like, it's not like we've gone out and like we would have done in the past, and for a guy like Jack Bird who's got injury problems, thrown down 600,000-700,000 on him. So I think 400,000 for 2 years, even if he does spend some time on the sideline with injury, it becomes a lot better signing because of that contract value. So I'm quite happy with the signing at that value because of the experience that he can bring to the club, and hopefully, as Eddie was just saying, the standards that he can help a guy like Jerome Luai set. Because I think that's the problem Appy's had coming across the club, is he's wanted to set high standards.
Yep.
But that's very hard to do as one person in a group of 30. Now, when you get Jerome Luai coming across, and then you've got Bird coming across who's going to assist with that, I think you start to get a little bit of a groundswell and a little bit of traction in that area. And that's my hope of what that signing is going to bring. Because I do agree, I don't think we're not going to get the Jack Bird that was running around in the year 2020, or 2018, because he's been around for a long time now. You're not going to get that player, but hopefully we can get enough value out of his experience. And at 400,000, it's a lot easier to get that value.
Do we think Bird's going to play lock?
That would be my where I'd probably play him. I think that's the best spot for him.
You're probably on that right edge, I would suggest, and I would suggest that we're still going to be buying a lock. That's kind of my feeling. What I like about it is I read that there was a fairly stringent medical test around this signing. He was checked out, very thoroughly to make sure he was
just like
okay.
Olam was, Joel.
Well, I don't know about that, but the thing is, Olam definitely was, but I still have hope there. I still think he can contribute next year if he has the right surgery and the right treatment and follows it up and does all the right things. I think there's still a player there in Olam. I think I wouldn't be shutting him down too quick, Nick.
Yeah, I've got a little bit of hope with Olam that he's now finally getting both knees done. So he's actually getting 2 surgeries, one on each knee. The fact that that's actually being done, and hopefully he can come back in a lot better shape than what we saw him this year, because we need him next year.
Yeah.
If you have a look at our centres right now, he's the only experienced option that I have there that I'd be happy to move forward with. So we need him playing the vast majority of games next year. So I think it's really crucial that this surgery kind of works out.
And Olam's a strike centre who's very dangerous, and we need that. He runs the ball real hard. He's got really good footwork. He's powerful. We need that. We've got Skelton coming, but we need that on both sides. Wing and centre would be very nice to have some size and some strike. We really need Olam. With Bird, I know, Joel, you're saying that he's likely, you think he'll probably be maybe a swap for Bateman, sort of position-wise, which I don't mind the idea of that, but I also like the idea if we've had Bateman play lock a bit this season, I'd much prefer someone like Jack Bird playing at 13. I think he'd look a bit more functional as a 13 compared to Bateman.
And for me, I'd like a little bit more size out in the second row. We've got Sam Fonu on one side who, just with his size and power, causes a lot of damage. I don't see Bird kind of being able to do that out on an edge. So I wouldn't mind someone with a bit more size and power and have Bird in that lock role.
I think your lock will be the Horsburgh or Hetherington. That's sort of my feeling.
If we get Hetherington, I don't mind that idea. Horsburgh, I'd rather have him in our prop rotation.
Yep.
And last talking point, speaking of size and speed, Marcelo Montoya. I always thought he was okay at the Bulldogs, but it was a terrible Bulldogs team. Went to the Waratahs, the Warriors, not the Waratahs, the Warriors, and has found another level. What do you think, guys? It's sort of confirmed, sort of not confirmed. It's nothing official, but he could be coming our way, Nick.
When that rumour came out the other day, I of course went straight to YouTube and looked up Montoya highlights, and the first one I found was a highlights package where the Warriors piled on a bunch of points against the Tigers. I don't know which game it was or when it was, but
it was a trial game.
Yeah, it could have been. He ran over the top of a couple of players. I think Charlie Staines may have been one of those players, but he's got some size and some speed and some power, which we lack.
Eddie getting the sets off. I think we're kind of seeing where Benji's thought is and Richo's thought is with this is that to get some more power, get those sets started a little bit better than what we've had from guys like Charlie Staines.
Yeah, it's a clear improvement. If we do get, we've already got Taruva and Skelton. If we get Montoya, that's three wingers there that can bring the ball back from the backfield, which we have been by far the worst team this year at. So the only thing I say with some of these signings, Joel, is there's like, obviously I know it's not easy when you're at the bottom to go out and recruit, and the market is very, very dry. Like even for the big sides, like teams like the Roosters, I know they've got the reputation of bringing in big guys, but like there's not many gun players on the market these days. The salary cap went up, and a lot of good players re-signed long term. So invariably, you're going to have to go with that Canterbury approach of trying to pick up some scraps and journeymen and soldiers and stuff like that. But I just do worry about guys like Jack Bird and Horsburgh and Montoya. Essentially they're unwanted by their clubs. That might not be because they're bad players. It might be salary cap situations and whatnot. But they're not a Jerome Luai. I'm sure 15 clubs wanted a Jerome Luai, or a lot of clubs, but I don't know how many clubs would want the players we're after. But I think we've done okay with what's available.
Yeah.
I think that's a crucial point, though, Eddie. If you're looking to sign players for next year, then right now, and it'll be the same at this time next year, right now the only players you can sign are players that other clubs don't want. Because the players for next year have been off contract and been able to talk since November last year. There's been almost 12 months. Pretty much any player that is desirable and goes to market is signed up by March the year before they're available to come to your club. So as a wooden spoon club, you don't have much choice. The only way you can improve your roster is being smart at picking the guys who other clubs are letting go. You're not going to be signing many guys who are off contract. They're all going to be guys that other clubs are letting go. And that's just the way of the NRL now. It's why I don't like the November 18 month before they can come to you signing, because it makes it harder to rebuild your club. If players couldn't sign until at the end of the previous season, would have a heap of players to be able to choose from who are off contract, because they wouldn't have been able to sign unless they're signing with their own club. So that's what makes rebuilding hard in the NRL now is that November 1st deadline of when players can talk to other clubs. In saying that, the interesting for me is there was an article last week where Richo came out and pretty much said what you just said, Eddie, is statistically we're the worst side in the competition coming out of our own end. So one of the plans that they've had in place for the past 6 months was to sign players that can assist with improving that area. And when you look at the signing of Skelton, you look at the potential signing of Montoya, I think that shows that it's definitely an area that we're looking at. The rumours around Toto at the time as well suggest the same thing, that they're looking at those players that can fix a weakness. And for me, that's the vast difference to the previous administration. What would happen with the previous administration is a player would come off contract, and it didn't matter who they were, didn't matter what position they played, didn't matter if we needed them. Oh, let's go throw $800,000 at them and try and get them across. Our signings so far, since Shane Richardson came across, appear to me at least to be much more targeted, and especially at our weaknesses. And I have to give the club credit for that. It's been a horrible year. It's been a really tough year. But I think our signings, and even the signing of Hunt, we've lacked a lot of impact through the forwards for how long now? We've had there hasn't been much versatility in our forward pack. Pretty much everyone does that same sort of role, and we've lacked a guy who provides some impact. And they've gone out and signed Hunt, and he's not playing big minutes, but no one can argue that he doesn't provide a little bit of impact. And for me, that's the difference at the moment is through the players we're signing, I can see the plan that Benji and Richo have in place to improve our on-field performance. And I can't say that. I've seen that in the past from our club.
Well, we've signed, if you add Bird in there, we've got 5 signatures. And then if you add maybe Montoya, Horsburgh and Hetherington, maybe I'm just going sort of best case scenario, you're talking about 8 players, which is half the team that you've changed. And I think if you added all of those 8 players in, along with the more experienced Galvin and a few other factors, that team, if you compared that to our round 1 or round 2 team this year, I think that team would be a much better team and would be the victorious team over that team. So I think we are moving in the right direction. It does take time, though. It does. As much as it's hard to have patience and it's hard to be optimistic after 3 spoons, you can see some, it comes back to that word green shoots. I think they are there. There's concerns. There's definitely worries. There's things that you think, is this going to work out? Is this going to be okay? We don't know those answers yet. But I think I'd rather be where we are now than where we were certainly 2 years ago and even 12 months ago, Nick.
Do you remember the halves we had? Was it the last round, towards the last round last season? I think we had Brandon Wakeham and Will Smith playing in halves.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about it takes a while to churn those players out and get newer guys in, we're starting to see some significant improvements in who's coming next season. So there's no reason not to be optimistic. I am very optimistic that we're going to get off the bottom, but how far off? We need to be climbing 3, 4, 5 places up, in my opinion, next season.
Well, I mean, the thing is the spine is settled, and if you add Montoya, you're probably looking at the backs being pretty much done. A couple of more additions to the forwards, and I think we're sort of in pretty decent shape, Gary.
And the other crucial thing that we've got to do over the next probably couple of weeks is it's players we move as well. We've got to get the right players out of the club to create space to bring these guys in. I think that's extremely crucial over the next 5 weeks. Is that guys like Naden, Sullivan, Clemmer,
or maybe even Staines.
Staines. You want 2 or 3 of those guys at least out of the club, and freeing up some roster spots. Because the more roster spots you free up, the more change you can create in your side, and that's the crucial part as well.
And Adam Dewey hasn't been mentioned there at all, talking about 2025, which is quite interesting in itself. But let's leave it there. It's been a long pod, a lot of distance covered. Eddie, Merry Christmas. We'll see you for trial matches in February.
Took the words out of my mouth, Joel. I was just going to wish everyone a Merry Christmas. I hope Santa's fine. See you next
You're
week.
hoping for a round 1 bye, mate?
And 2.
And 2.
And 3. Just get them all out of the way early.
And lastly, Jordan's 3 in a row. It was official, but
he jinxed us.
Yeah, fell at the last hurdle.
It was never going to happen. Well, let's be honest. When he said it, come on, Jordan.
Joel, what are we're talking about West Tigers changes. Have we got any new recruits? Are we dumping people, or we haven't worked it out yet? We do a review each year.
Thank you for your last pod, Nick.
We've got to start end of season review. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Fire up the shredder.
First one through the shredder is Jordan. I'm afraid you can't throw out false prophecies and survive. So, Jordan, you're gone, mate. I love your work, but thanks for coming.
Yeah, and I finally accepted the premise that he would have had 3 in a row if we had a 1.
The funny thing is, Gary, is that you're the Adam Dewey of the podcast. You're fiercely loyal. You've been here the longest. You keep popping up even though we think you're gone.
but I'd actually turn around and chase.
Alrighty, thank you guys.
Thanks Joel. Boys. Thanks, boys.